Hey, Aldi, could you turn on your camera for just a minute so I can see you? So I take it you can hear us fine currently.
Yeah, that's fine.
Got a
Yeah, it'll
thumbs
work.
up there.
Yeah. Oh.
Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, Aldi?
I am, but I was gonna be really quick. I looked at my sheet late.
Can you hear me, Aldi? Okay, thank you. You can turn off your camera if you want.
Performed it since I was 12. Okay, you guys just follow after me. This is the song that we used to sing at Boy Scout camp when it was a miserable rainy day and everybody was in a bad mood, and this would make people a little bit happier. Now, it only takes about one time through for first graders to learn this song. Okay, so I'm not sure you guys are at that level, but you just repeat after me. And I don't need this thing, but
There's some claps too, so that's supposed to make it a little easier. Zoom people might like to hear. Okay, well, here we go. You just repeat after me.
B5. Oh, B5. Oh. Pizza. Pizza.
Two, three, go. Then you go as fast as you can. Okay, so it's like.
Oh, B5. Thank you, Mike.
hopefully you guys feel a little better about yourselves.
Do you have any visiting Rotarians with us today? Okay. Do we have any guests of Rotarians? In the back there?
Thank you, ma'am. I have with me today Fire Chief Frank Wagner and Lieutenant Dan McElwee. Both of them have turned in their applications as prospective members.
Very good. Thanks, Lynn. Welcome. Any other guests of Rotarians? A little club business. First of all, again, I am urging you to get those silent auction items in, 3 per person. we're going to start having a contest here pretty soon and have some signs up on the wall that will tell you how your team is doing, and we'll probably have some prizes for those who are the most successful. There's an event going on this weekend. You could take care of it very easily, and that is, it's the CAPS KBRC auction. It starts at, I think, 9 a.m. You just call in. We have all kinds of gift certificates, and you get 40% off, or some 50% off. And just call in, like they have Maxdale's and Christensen's Nursery, et cetera, or there's some larger items too, but you can call in, you can buy 3 gift certificates and bring them in, and you'd be done, and we would applaud you greatly. So that's one way we can do that. This evening is a bowling. Hope to see all of you there. Bring your friends, bring your kids, buy some food. It's a chance to support a local business that's been hit hard by the pandemic, and it should be a fun event. So I like to hope to see most, if not all of you there this evening. It starts at 5 o'clock. And Becky couldn't be here today, but she's been organizing it. Should be fun. Now, the next thing is the budget. If you saw your email that I sent out last night, we were unfortunately missed a couple of bills that came in, and it put us about $40,000 to $50,000 over budget on Patrick's Playground. We had a limited amount of money to start with, so I think that we're going to be okay. We'll just have to deduct a little bit from some of the projects that we're doing. And we're going to get through this. And, you know, it doesn't have to be a big project every year that we do. We don't have any projects on the horizon. And so what we want to do is do projects that people can do for the community, because that's where we can do a lot of good. Sound system here is still a top priority, and we've got Eric is working on that. We'll probably have some demos, and we're going to do that. Hopefully next month, we just got these bills last week, and they're being paid this week, so we're all done with that. We'll have some final figures, and we can have some ideas of what we're going to be able to do in the rest of the 21-22 year. We don't want this to happen again on any large projects, and so we're in the process of establishing some protocols so that any money that's spent we will be sure that it is accounted for. Overseer who will keep the board involved. We're going to have some protocols, so we won't be surprised. This was a big surprise, but again, so we're going to get through it, so on and so forth. If you're a captain of the monthly team, I need to know. I'd like to know what your projects are. If you haven't already told me, just some project around the community. See the world a better place to live. That's kind of the things that we're looking at. The Christmas party is I believe, going to be, and Sedro Woolley this at least this year. If you have any pictures from events, installation, the auction, the barbecue, golf, fireside at Sheena's, can you send those to Ruth and I? We'd like to get some of those on Facebook so that people would know what we're doing out there, attract some more people to want to join us. So those are the announcements that I have today. Does anybody else have any announcements or questions or anything like that they'd like to speak about? So feel free. Quiet group today. So with that, I will turn it over to the Wheel of Fortune people.
Number 18. I did. Oh. I'm sorry. Number 68. Yeah, otherwise known as 89, exactly. Yeah. Oh, very nice. It says winner chooses Husky or Krug to pay $2. Philip Cougars. I'll be around in a minute to collect the two. And number 65. Excellent, thank you, yes. And number 3. I feel like we should have background music or something, they're so quiet, right? I feel like we should have background music or something, they're so quiet.
After my meeting.
Is that it? Okay. Let me, I had a couple other things that I missed when I was talking about this, and the programs or the booklets are over here on the side. If you haven't picked one up yet, please do. And if you know someone who is not able to come to the meetings, please grab one and take one to them. I meant to put in a bulletin last night that we would mail to anyone who can't get to the meetings and needs a booklet. So we'll have that. And the other thing is there was a number of t-shirts that were ordered and or purchased at the Janke, or the Patrick's Playground dedication, and I have the balance of them there. I'm not sure there's anybody here that didn't get their t-shirts or didn't pay, but if there is, please see me after the meeting and we'll get you your t-shirts. Thank you, and that's all of my announcements. You ready to go, everybody? I know this is a quiet group today, so I am going to kind of take it easy on you because we all went through the ordeal of Mike Janicki running the song piece of the program. So, so here we go. It's homecoming week at Sedro Woolley High School. So, if you did not graduate from Sedro Woolley High School, you are a buck. And of course, if you did graduate from Sedro Woolley High School, $2. And that's all I got for you today. Oh, Happy Bucks, yes. Okay, Happy Bucks coming up next.
So I got a happy 20. Hopefully Ruth can hear us on there. I asked her to go with me down to Woodinville to do a presentation to the Rotary down there, and of course she's from Sedro Woolley Rotary, and so what did she say? Yes, and she came down there with me, and it was it's a long drive by yourself, and it takes 5 minutes if you're with Ruth, because it was a great conversation both ways. Thank you, Ruth. $20.
There you go. Thanks, Mike. Happy Bucks.
I got a happy 5. Well, that seems odd. Just for you to head out Saturday and go to Oklahoma and then watch our youngest son play in a golf tournament Monday and Tuesday. So happy to get to go see him play.
I've got a belated 20 for my daughter's wedding, which finally happened and was beautiful. And a pre-20, next week I fly out to see the baby in Chicago. My youngest, not like an actual baby. And then I got 5 for Mike's song because it did cheer me up, just that he sang it. I didn't even have to sing it to cheer me up, so.
Well, I had the pleasure of going to Utah, and I got a happy 20 for marrying off my kids to now. It was her second go around, but this time it was a good one. It wasn't a good one the first time, but this was a really good one. I even was the officiant for the event, and I didn't screw it up, and she got married, and I think she's even legal, so this is all good. Yeah.
Okay, I just have some happy bucks to let you all know that our coalition is collecting information. So if you can please take this survey, it is due in December and we need to have at least 200 surveys, and I think we're at 6. So if I can get Rotary's help, I would really appreciate it. And also special thanks to the mayor and council last night. They did a proclamation for National Drug Take Back Day. And that will be on Saturday, October 23rd from 10 to 2. So come down and see us.
Yeah.
I want to, I'm giving a happy 20 because yesterday we celebrated Oliver and Hammer's 100th anniversary. So I don't know if you were aware of that or not, but if not, pop in and wish them congratulations. And I think it just goes to show the tenacity of that company. So anyway. Happy 10 because it's homecoming week this week, and I wore my jacket last night to the coronation and lip sync, and I got Matt to put on his jacket for the meeting today too. So it still fits. I'll let him model it. So I want to encourage everybody next year to wear their jackets as well. The other part of my happy 10 is my husband's been working out of state for the last 16 out of 20 months, and he's home for the weekend visiting, so that's exciting.
Mike, I've got 10 happy dollars. One of my friends, who I cannot disclose their names yet, was awarded a high honor, and I guess I can probably disclose it later this afternoon. Thank you. Everybody, looks like we got everybody. Thanks. Okay, it's time for early leavers. Thank you for you coming today. Andrew, you can go ahead. Okay, Cheryl has a request. I think she wants a handle on the pull down to the kitchen. Someone who is mechanically inclined. Yes, I can. No, that's fine. Andrew, you can go ahead and unmute. Okay. Today our speaker is Andrew Intrikin. I hope I pronounced that right. He's a manager of Skagit Net LLC, joint operating entity of the port and PUD number 1. He's responsible for business development for a regional broadband model, driving countywide broadband policies, practices, and operations, inclusive of public policy affecting broadband work, including federal congressional acts, FCC rulemaking, Washington state legislative actions, regulatory code making. He has a master's degree from Gonzaga, completed a postgraduate degree at Harvard in marketing management. He's been the president, board member of United Way, Burlington Chamber of Commerce, Sedro Woolley Chamber of Commerce, Padilla Bay Foundation, and chair of the Washington Public Ports Association Committee. I believe he's going to speak on fiber optics throughout the valley today, so let's give a warm welcome to Andrew in Truckin.
Well, hi, everyone. Can you all hear me okay before we dive in? Can anyone hear me talking? Don't think you can hear me.
We hear you on Zoom, Andrew.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Me too.
Sounds like the group in person's not able to hear us.
I can hear you. Thumbs up over there.
Oh, perfect. Sounds like we're in business now. Okay. Well, I'll just start talking, and if I hear otherwise, then I'll stop. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm really excited to be here. I used to attend Rotary meetings with my grandfather growing up, so I was that kid in the back creating a nuisance during those meetings, and now I'm a Rotarian myself. So just thank you all for the wonderful work you do for your community. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here if I have that capability. It looks like I do. And so we'll just dive right in. I'll talk about I call this PowerPoint SkagitNet 101, and I've given this presentation once before, and I think I get a lot of questions about what is SkagitNet and what do we do, and so we came up with this kind of SkagitNet 101 where we'll just talk about the inner workings of SkagitNet and how it all came about and what we do up to present day. And hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on what SkagitNet is, and I hope it helps relieve any outstanding questions you may have about what SkagitNet does. So I don't know if I was looking at the recent census data, and it appears as though the population of Skagit County is roughly 129,000 people. But if you took out all the incorporated areas, like Anacortes and Mount Vernon and Burlington, Sedro Woolley, you'd be left with a population of really only about 50,000 people. And it's really spread out, right? I mean, this is about 1,900 square miles of area. And what we learned right away is that there's only one incumbent licensed exchange carrier or incumbent and in our area. And what that means is that this one company they're federally mandated or obligated to provide a basic phone service or basic connection to everyone inside their exchange boundary. And here's the map of their exchange boundary. And I don't think anyone in Skagit County lives outside of that blue polygon area. So roughly 95% of the geography that they cover. So what happens is if we go back in time and we go to 1984, the regulations and the federal regulations that happened in 1984 and deregulating the telecom industry started in 1984 and then again in 1996 with the Telecom Act. And since then, all the subsidies have started to dwindle away to the point it doesn't really make sense to be an incumbent exchange carrier anymore, because if you think about it, this company is obligated to provide a basic service, but it was built on subsidies. And if those subsidies are now going away, they can no longer maintain the infrastructure, and they also can't upgrade to stay current with today's needs. And so nationally, you'll hear these conversations that communities have, and they're up in arms about, their providers are just doing a lousy job, and there's some finger pointing and things like that. But it's just a way that things have systematically unfolded over time, which is where we are today. And so in 2000, ports and public utility districts in the state of Washington became eligible or authorized to pursue economic development initiatives related to broadband and build broadband infrastructure on a wholesale basis. And the port started to build our own on a kind of self-serving basis, if you will, to meet the needs of our business park out at the Skagit Regional Airport and the business park just adjacent to there. That was in 2008, 2009. So we had the authority already for about 8 years or so, but it wasn't until 2009 that we built out a small network to meet the needs of our business tenants. And that's been going on for really well for about a decade. And you can see here a picture of a drill operator. You'll see this piece of equipment all over town. And what this is doing is they're plowing conduit interduct into, across the road, and then we'll come in later and we'll blow fiber optics through that conduit. So everywhere we go, we make sure that there's a conduit, and then we put the cable infrastructure inside so that it's safe, not direct buried or anything like that. And in 2017, the Port of Skagit commissioners and at that time Patsy, our then executive director, came up with a set of policy goals that would extend what we had built over the last decade or so and take a more countywide proactive approach to building out fiber optics countywide. And it included what we call carrier grade and open access, which means that if it's a publicly controlled piece of infrastructure, then any private internet service provider can jump on that fiber. They can lease that fiber and use it. And we knew that there needed to be consumer choice, and it would in turn produce economic development and many other great things for our community with improved broadband connectivity. So we could probably spend a whole hour just going through kind of some of the advantages of broadband, telehealth, medicine, and work from home. But just a real quick snapshot, you can look at the evolution of where we are and what broadband can do, even included with some of these social media applications, where just in 2011, it started with just a photo sharing application. And today you can now rely on that same application for e-commerce. So it's real. And of course, the educational opportunities. This is just a real quick snapshot from Coursera, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And you all know now how many online educational opportunities there are today. So this is just a snapshot to see the development and the increase in education opportunities if you have broadband access. So back to SkagitNet, I wanted to touch on some of the memberships that we're part of that help make us successful. And one of the first memberships I wanted to bring to your attention is this organization called Petrichor Broadband. So these 6 ports all got together and formed a governmental LLC called Petrichor. And its purpose is to help all of us run and maintain and manage our fiber optic networks in a cohesive business model. So we actually adopted the Port of Whitman County's model in 2017. We had run a different model from 2008, 2009 up until 2017 when we decided to go after this larger countywide effort, but also changed the way that we did it. And we adopted Port of Whitman County's model. And so us 6 ports all formed this Petrichor Broadband LLC. In addition to the management services that we get from Petrichor, we also get legislative advocacy at the state level, which is really helpful. So we know what's going on, and we have an ear to what's going on in the legislature as things progress in time related to broadband. The second is the Shelby, or the Schools, Health, and Libraries Broadband Coalition. And the important thing here is that in addition, like Petrichor, we have it's really focused on the state of Washington advocacy and assistance. Shelby is the federal level, which is why it makes sense for us to be members there, because in addition to the federal advocacy, we have a seat at the table with some of the appropriation staff that actually decide where grant dollars are going to go towards. So we've been able to sit with them in person and go through the port's open access model where we just lease on a wholesale basis. And that, in addition to some additional lobbying efforts, we have that seat at the table. So these memberships are very important to us. I also want to point out that Skagit.net is by no means a one-man show. A lot of the times it's perceived like, you know, Andrew does it all, and that's absolutely not the case. This gal, Sherry, on the right here, is she makes sure that every month Skagit.net gets paid by the providers, and we have 6 internet service providers licensed on our network. So she's a really important team member to Skagit.net. And then Sarah Hastings there on the left side of the screen. She does all the grants and makes sure that we stay up to date and up to speed monthly on all the grant reporting. As you can imagine, the paperwork and the clerical assistance that's required for that on an ongoing basis. And then, of course, we have the PUD team with George Sedro over at Skagit PUD and all of their team down to the engineers and the projects that they're doing. Because we have under Skagit.net umbrella, I can use all of the Port of Skagit's fiber optic infrastructure, and we can use all of the PUD's fiber optic infrastructure. And as they build out more water plants, they always run fiber for primarily for their SCADA system, but now we can make that open access and utilize that for Skagit.net. So we can reach a much broader geographic area around Skagit County if we had not been partners. So it's working really well. We also knew that we wanted Skagit.net to operate more like a business and be business-like so that we can be responsive to private industry. We looked at the example of the incumbent that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation here, and how relying on subsidies long-term doesn't make sense. And so we knew that we wanted to build a self-sustaining enterprise that if we could get just enough revenue to pay for salaries and pay for operations, then we would be in good shape and have a little bit left over to then go build more fiber infrastructure around town. If we could make that promise and commitment to the constituents, then we would be doing everyone well. And excited to say that we're already in the black as opposed to being in the red. This year we had about a 2 or 3 year cash flow analysis where we thought maybe in 2023 we'd be cash flow positive, but it's actually already starting to happen and is as of today. So we're really excited about that. The budget highlights, just to kind of go through this quickly, Skagit.net has a capital budget of about 6.7 million and operational budget of just under 250,000. And in 2020, we ended the year with 93,000. And like I said, we're already on track to meet our 10-year cash flow projection. So now I just wanted to dive into just kind of a little bit more of what happens on the back end with Skagit.net and what's really happening prior to that drill machine we saw earlier in the presentation. What makes all of that happen? What's the back end process? And I'll go through that with you here briefly because I think it just really helps everyone see the big picture here. So what happens is we've contracted with Petrichor LLC to provide management services for us. And what that means is any internet service provider who's on our system can email the Petrichor and say, hey, we have a location that we want to serve, pick any address. And they say, we need a quote. And so Petrichor then responds with what's called an NRC and an MRC. The NRC is the non-recurring charge, and the MRC is the monthly recurring charge. So the NRC is, we look at, well, how much is it going to cost to go from our current infrastructure to whatever address? And if it's, $10,000, is it $20,000? We look at how do we get a return on that investment if we built it and it costs Skagit.net $10,000. How do we make that up in a 10-year life cycle? So we can lower that NRC to the provider. And then the MRC is a standard charge that we lease to the provider on a monthly basis, and that never changes. So the provider then confirms, and that triggers what's called a service order, which I get and I sign off. And that all triggers the design and engineering process where we can then do the design from the current SCADGENet infrastructure to the new address, and we can go through permitting, and then we do the strand mapping and splicing and all this technical jargon that I won't go into right now. But it triggers this whole process. And the big picture here, the reason why I explain all of this is we don't build anything until we have a service order summary. Because if we had done something in the scenario like that's not this, we would have, let's just say, oh, we know these, pockets of the community need service. Why don't we build out to there? But without a confirmed service order summary, there's nobody leasing that infrastructure. So you could get yourself in a scenario where you've just built out to an area, but if a provider is not willing to lease it, or you don't have a signed service order summary, it could become an unused asset almost immediately. So we always wait for the providers to market their services, sell their services to an end user, and if they need to utilize the SCADGENet infrastructure, they can lease it from us. And back to the pricing model, we have a series of fees that we break down, and so that the provider knows before they ever market their services to the end user or the customer, they don't have to come back to me or to Petrocor or to anyone asking what the fee is going to be. They already know what the fee is going to be. And the reason why that's important is because they can be agile and aggressive in their marketing tactics to go sell to more customers, and they know it's going to be standard on the back end. So let's look at a real life case study. The Port of Skagit actually recently looked to get another internet service provider at the port's admin building up there at the Skagit Regional Airport. And so the model that we just went through, this is a case study. Another gal in our office manages all the internet for the port, and she elicited quotes from 5 different internet service providers on our network, maybe even all 6, and 3 responded. And you can see Ziply Fiber there at the bottom came in at $765. NPI there on the left of the screen came in at $400, and that's the monthly. And then you can see they're adding the non-recurring charges at $300, and we just saw what the NRC charges were in the earlier slide. And then we have Elixo. Here, I think my video panel is in the way. Elixo here on the bottom or on the right is at 352. So you can see the breakdown of the economics here, and the port ended up going with the Elixo as their provider. So it's a model that we know works, and our providers are excited to lease the infrastructure from us. This is the Network Operations Center. So everywhere we build fiber optics, it all comes back to what's called a NOC, or Network Operations Center. And in here is where all of our 6 providers set up all of their electronics and equipment, and they need power to plug their equipment in. So we have power, we have backup battery in case the power goes out. It's environmentally controlled. Anytime someone enters that door there, they call a phone number, which is listed here. But they call this phone number and they say, hey, we're going to enter the SCADGENet hut, and they have access. And when they leave, the Network Operations Center knows that they have left. And the reason that's important is because if something were to go wrong or someone goes down, kind of a thing, we need to know who is the last person or group in that facility. And we haven't ever had that before. Prior to having this facility, all of our providers were actually inside the Port of Skagit's copy room. And so if you're an internet service provider leasing our fiber and a customer goes down at December 24th at 9 o'clock at night, the Port of Skagit is closed. So not ideal if you're an internet service provider. So we started looking at these pain points for our providers and making the appropriate changes and investments to meet the needs of their service level agreements and develop a network that we call carrier grade. So that's just one example of some of the improvements we knew right away that we needed to do. Here's just a quick look at the providers on our network. And I'm excited to get to this part in the presentation because this is both existing and proposed projects. So today we have infrastructure all the way from LaConner, and we follow this run and we come all the way through here, Sedro Woolley, and we jump on existing PUD infrastructure that gets us out to Hamilton. And then from Hamilton, pretend that the rest of this blue line is gone, and as well as this red line. But what we do have funding for is to complete this backbone from Hamilton to Concrete, and then continue from Concrete down to Rockport and south on the 530 highway. And just right down here is where the Soxhuato Indian tribe is. And we have about 30 locations there on the tribe. And we have funding for all of this that goes all the way back to Hamilton. And so in addition to that funding, we also just received funding to do a public-private partnership with Ziply Fiber to build out in the Hamilton, Concrete, and Marble Mount areas. And that's fiber to the home distribution that will be built out by the end of 2022. And that's funding from an organization called CURB, or the Community Economic Revitalization Board, for those fiber to the home, or fiber to the premise, I should say, in those communities. And then Public Works Board under Commerce is the kind of the second funding agency under Commerce. There's CURB, and then there's the Public Works Board. The Public Works Board is who has funded all the way from Concrete to Rockport and then south to the tribe. That's all funded by Public Works Board. And then, since we're on the topic of Public Works Board, they just had a funding round open for up to $5 million projects. And we applied for this area down here, which is what we're calling the Fur Island fiber to the premise. And so you can see our existing backbone here in blue, and this yellow line down to the green lines. That's the proposed backbone to get us to the Fur Island area. And then all this green is the build out that we would do under that grant. So we're hoping to hear back soon from the Public Works Board about that funding. So that's in the works right now. There's also other funding that's available today, and we're working on identifying other areas in time for a grant that's open right now with the state. And so we're just moving right along. And what we want to stay focused on is aligning ourselves with the state goals, because it doesn't make any sense for us to go make our own goals if we're not aligning with what other folks are doing, and in this case, the state broadband office. So we want to align what we're doing with them. And you can see here that they have a goal that by 2028, all businesses and residences have access to broadband at 150 symmetrical service. And one way to achieve that is by building out fiber optics. And I won't go through this in great detail, but this is just a visual that fiber will outweigh really any other technology that we know today. So if we want to meet the state broadband goal of 150 symmetrical, we're going to build out dark fiber optics. When we look at the speed test data that the state of Washington has done, they've for a long time now have been capturing speed tests on their website, and they make that available publicly to all of us. And if you look at the average, we're at about 42 down and 8 up. So we know there's areas in our community that still need improved broadband. And then here's some Microsoft data. If you look at the federal mapping, it says all of us have access to broadband. But then if you look at the Microsoft data, we know that, again, there's some gaps. We also look at the federal funding and where it's been allocated in our community. The purple area is a company called Viasat, and they provide wireless. And SpaceX, become more widely known and popular in recent months, is the dark red areas. And then Ziply Fiber has received in these blue areas funding to build out gigabit services. We talked about the Fur Island area. And that's it. That's our SkagitNet 101. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We do have a question here, Andrew.
Perfect.
I have just signed up for T-Mobile hotspot, and that seems to be working pretty darn well for me. I know it's not available everywhere. I didn't hear anything in your presentation about mobile hotspots, but how is that helping or not helping your process?
Sure. Yes. Good question. And one thing I can tell you is this industry, which I don't pretend to be an expert in, is, it's highly competitive and there's really low margins. And what I know from experience is that things are really fast moving. We've made, we've given presentations and talks about a certain strategy or project, and a month goes by and the whole strategy has changed. So it's very dynamic. And so what I'm saying is, to your point, is we don't want to compete with the private sector. If there's an area that makes sense for the private sector to serve and they don't need to utilize public infrastructure, then that's fine with us. These wireless companies that provide wireless services, that, it's better than nothing, right? And so what we do is we try to find those areas where we can partner with the private sector that makes sense for them, so that we can build out fiber to these hard to reach areas. But if you're relying on mobile hotspot, it's probably not meeting your everyday needs, which sounds like you're probably in an area that could benefit from improved broadband if you're relying on mobile hotspot.
It's actually remarkably good. It's not as good as my high-speed internet here in town, but it's not bad. You can stream movies and it doesn't sit there and give you the spinning wheel of death. That's nice. The other thing is, what's the story with SpaceX? Are they serving people yet?
Good question. SpaceX was awarded in those certain polygon areas under the recent RDOF funding, or the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund program. And what I can say is we won't know what they are serving or what they're really doing for about another 6 years, just because there are no reporting requirements along the way. So they could start, pretty quickly, or they could be starting later. I don't know. But what I do know is that they're not obligated or required to provide any reporting data, and that goes for anyone who's recently been awarded with RDOF funding. But what I do know is that in those areas, wireless may work, but without looking at the terrain and boots on the ground, I don't know if wireless will be a good option for many of those folks living in those hard to reach areas in our community. But the funding that's on the table today does say that you can target those areas that have been funded with wireless, because there's a need in our state to bring wireline services to these areas. So all those areas that were awarded wireless funding are open game, if you will, for some of these new grant dollars to build out broadband infrastructure. I think we have a question here on the Zoom.
Yes, Andrew, thanks for the brief. I'm interested in the timeline of completion out to the Sox-Sawaddle. Do you have any idea when it's going to be complete?
Yes, we're targeting by end of 2022, and we're going through permits now. We have fiber ready to go. We have design ready to go. And now we're working with our environmental consultants to get us through the environmental permitting that we need to do. So we're about 6 months away before we'll go out to bid, which will take us into Q3 and hopefully meet the end of the year timeline.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, Becky?
Andrew, I have some lots that are for sale in Birds View, and I wonder when we might see some action out there near like Lusk Road area and Pinelli Road.
In the Birds View area. Yep, that's, if you can send me some addresses, that would be helpful, because what we're doing right now, there's up to $25 million in grants right now through the state. And so what we're doing now is we're going around and we're taking all of the feedback that we've received from, folks like you and others around all of Skagit County, and we're starting to identify these areas that we know folks have expressed to us, or the mapping tools that we use where we can identify with third-party speed test data and all this other, these tools that we have. So it's really helpful to get feedback like this from you and anyone else who's willing to share, so we can start identifying these areas. Because without that feedback from all of you, we rely on other data points to target areas for these grants. So I'm happy to go through with you on a map some of these areas that need improved broadband, and we can align that with some of the grant and whether it'll be high scoring or not on the current rounds, or if we can save it for a different funding opportunity. But the more information we have, the best. I mean, on the Fur Island area, we heard from constituents there in the Fur Island area, and so now we're getting letters of support from actual residences, which hopefully will help our grant that we just put in to PWB. So same thing. Anywhere around the county, if let's shoot me an email, and if that's all you want to do is send me the address, that's fine. But if you want to take more time and dive deeper, I'm happy to do that with you too.
Thank you, Andrew. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Andy. That was very interesting, and I think, especially for someone like myself, we wish you success in expanding the fiber optic. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Well, I just have one more announcement, because I told you that I had a friend that got an honor. I could, but 5 minutes after I said that, I can. And I wanted to say that it's a great deal of sorrow, sort of, but Mary Lyon, one of my senior felony deputies, was appointed by Judge Stiles and others as the new Superior Court Commissioner for Skagit County. So if you can, please help clean up and pick up the tables. And with that, we will see you tonight.